Go ahead and get started. Welcome to those who are in person as well as those who are attending online. We are continuing our study in Job. Today we're going to look at one of the three friends, Eliphaz, and just kind of see what he had to say to Job. I don't think I've got this microphone on, do I? Let me try. We'll go through these 10 commandments and see how they apply. Let's begin with prayer, and then we'll jump right on. Father in heaven, we're so thankful, Lord, for all of your blessings. Thank you, Father, for those who are attending Bible class this morning in person, as well as those who are online. I'm so personally thankful for those who hunger and thirst after your word. Help us to not only hear your word, read it, but help us to obey it. Help us to put it into practice so that we can be better people for having made the spiritual investment. Thank you, Father, just for all the blessings you give to us. We are mindful of Harry's dad, and we pray for him and all those who are struggling in their health. Help us to always be tenderhearted and compassionate to those who are in need. Forgive us of our sins and our shortcomings. We thank you, and we love you for this and all your blessings. In Jesus' name, amen. Again, we're reviewing just a little bit, and I always like to kind of do a little bit of a review, especially when we get ready to introduce new material, especially the way that we're studying Job, because we're not going verse by verse, and we're not going particularly chapter by chapter. Think about this as more kind of a flyover, an overview, so that when you read this in your own personal time and your own personal study, then you'll have kind of a background, a working understanding of what's actually going on in Job. Job is an interesting book, and Job addresses the one point that pain is something that we all have to deal with, and our faith is what should carry us and our right perspective when it comes to how we deal with pain. Again, I'll put this up, 3 divisions of the book, 3 ways that you can kind of slice the book up. The first section, the first 3 chapters, talk about Job's distress, and then chapter 4 through about chapter 37 really talks about Job's defense. That's when his 3 friends are going to come in and give their 2 cents worth. I started to say 3 cents worth, but they give their 2 cents worth of why they think this is happening. And we can relate to that. You ever had that friend that comes to you and something along the lines of, hey, Jimmy, I can't tell you what to do. You know what I would do if I was you? You know, they're going to give you a piece of their mind, whether they could afford it or not. I'm like, really? I didn't. And my grandmother used to say, Junior, I didn't ask you. It's like, okay, all right, Granny, I understand. Well, think of Job's 3 friends like that. There's some things that his 3 friends got right, okay? They heard he was hurting. They came to him. They sat with him, okay? They got those things right. Where they missed the boat was offering their misguided opinion as to why he was suffering. And we'll talk about that in just a second. That's Job's defense. And then Job's deliverance, chapter 38, about chapter 38 to chapter 42. We will pay strict attention to that because his attitude, actually, he gets an attitude adjustment from God in those chapters. So you can actually cut the book up into those 3 sections. Let me just kind of bring us forward, and then we'll get into chapter 4, where Eliphaz kind of offers his 2 cents. The book really helps us understand how we should magnify God and not necessarily magnify our problems. And that is really a tough one, Because when I'm hurting and when I'm struggling and when I'm in pain, I tend to want to magnify my problems instead of magnifying God. But the book of Job really points us in the right direction to say, listen, God is not your problem, Satan is. And again, in the Hebrew language, Satan meaning the accuser. He is your problem, and it's not God. A lot of times when we struggle and we hurt, we do kind of kick God to the curb, don't we? And then we say we'll come back, when I get my stuff together, Jimmy, I'll be back to church. Really? Back it up and try it again. you gotta go. You got it going the wrong. You got it going the wrong way. So the book really teaches us to magnify God and not magnify your problems. Let me recap a little bit, and then we'll just get right on to Eliphaz. Job's prosperity acknowledged God's blessings. Kind of the part of chapter 1, at the beginning of the book of Job, we're introduced to an exceptionally prosperous farmer/rancher named Job. Job regards his success to be the result of God's blessings, and then we're told that God has blessed the work of his hand. God recognizes Job's faithfulness, and he remarks to Satan, in Hebrew, the accuser, have you considered my servant Job? And we spent a little bit of time talking about that. This pain that Job is going through, we're going to learn it's not anything as a result of what he has done. Quite the opposite. It's based on a recommendation, a thumbs up, based on God and a conversation that God and Satan had. The old preachers for the book of Job used to say something like this, could God make that same recommendation if it were me or you? Wow, that one hit me right between the eyes, And God actually says to Satan, he actually says to the accuser, have you considered my servant Job? And so in that regard, the accuser then strikes down, as you know, Job's property, including his children. Then that didn't work. He didn't get, Job to cave on that one. So he comes back and he attacks his health. And, still that didn't work. And so we're getting ready to now look at his three friends and what happens when they come to actually minister to him. The second point I wrote down, God allows Satan to destroy Job's prosperity. Remember, he said, look, no wonder he's serving you. You put a hedge around him. All that stuff that you've blessed him with, take that away, he'll curse you to your face. God says, all right, go for it. Don't look for that in the scripture. It doesn't say that. But that's the idea. And when the prosperity of things and stuff didn't work, then the attack on his health. The problem of pain comes when times are hard. The question of whether adversity is a sign of God's disfavor is no light matter. In other words, the friends, Eliphaz especially, is going to say, boy, did you mess up with God. If you didn't mess up with God, then why are you struggling? I got a problem with that theology. I got a problem with that mode of thinking. And really, God's going to have a problem with it too. But that's where he's coming from. That's the direction. And he says now, really, if Satan can get Job to believe that he's being punished by God, maybe caught in either two snares. He may abandon his righteous habits in the mistaken assumption that they are offensive to God. In other words, if I'm already struggling and if I'm already having some problems, then what's the point? What's the point of serving God if I'm going to struggle anyway? Matter of fact, didn't his wife kind of start singing that tune a little bit? Remember what she said to him? You still maintaining your integrity? And then she had a recommendation. This is funny to me. Not just let go, not just quit, curse God and die. But we understand, because of some comments that were made, and I accept that, Job wasn't the only one struggling. She was struggling too. I get it. I completely understand and completely get it. But the message there is, when we're struggling and when we're in pain, that's not the time to let go of God. Matter of fact, I would argue that's the time to draw closer. That's the time to really get closer. God allowed Satan to destroy Job's health. We talked about that. And then Job's friends arrive to comfort him. And I've already told you this, there's some good things that they did. They knew he was hurting. They heard he was hurting. They came to him. They came to kind of see about him and to minister to him. So in chapter 3, Job actually gets to the point to where he's cursing the day he was born. He's like, oh, woe is me. Why is all this happening? It would have been better for me not to have been born. And those of us who've gone through pain, we understand that. But that station should just be temporary, if at all. We shouldn't stay stuck there, because in pain is where we can find true purpose when it comes to God. But Job's human, and chapter 3 is all about him feeling sorry for himself, and I can relate to that, But there's a certain point, native Texans, my children are native Texans, I'm not, but I got here as quickly as I could. Native Texans say you got to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. There's a point, I respect that, but there's another point that says, even when I'm struggling, I don't need to stay there. I need to find meaning and purpose, and that struggle should draw me closer to God. So in chapter 4, watch what, in the first guy's name is Eliphaz. Watch what he says, and let's start like this. Have you ever been in a certain pain and people come around to try and console you? What are some of the things based on pain that people say when they come around to console you? Let's start the discussion like this, and then I'll show you what Eliphaz had to say. What are some things that people, they don't mean any harm, and we'll get into this when I give you the 10 Commandments sheet, but I guess depending on the pain, what are some things that people say to try to comfort you or cheer you up? What's some of the things they say?
I know how you feel.
Okay, yeah. And I'm not going to stay here long because I'll come back to it. Do you?
No.
I'm just.
No.
Do you? What else do they, I know how you feel. What else do they say? Just generic. Because there's quite a bit.
Praying for you.
Huh?
Praying for you.
Now that one I can take. I may have a little bit of struggles with that one. But this one, I can say thank you and move on. Okay? But again, I go back to the same, are you? How do I know? I'm just, and I told you my story on that one. I used to say, okay, I'm praying for you. I've changed that now. Somebody asked me to pray for them, let's stop right now and pray. I didn't used to do that, Miss Ginger. I didn't. I used to give the 2-cent answer, okay, I sure will. And I didn't bit more pray for them than the man. I'm just being open and honest. But to make sure that I'm honoring their request and really earnest to make sure that I don't forget, let's just do it right now before I get busy. Before I forget, then I've done it.
I think that's what it is. A lot of times we get busy with life, we forget.
Understand.
And we say we had good intentions.
I get it. I do.
And then next thing shows up on our plate, and we're just like moving on.
We went on, and we didn't do what we didn't do what they asked of us to do.
What we said we would do.
And what we said we would do. What else do they say? Any other? As people are processing their pain?
Kind of like, if I were you, or this is what I would do.
Yeah. There's a wonderful movie I love, the Beverly Hills Cop series of movies, and one of them, I can't remember which one, he kept telling him, he said, man, Axel, I can't tell you what to do, but you know what I would do if I were you? That just cracks me up. Well, if you're not going to tell me, then hush. If you can't say anything, then just be quiet. But people, out of the goodness of their heart and their experience, they want to offer their opinion, their way of consoling. Anything else? What else do they say? I'm going to show you what Eliphaz says here in a minute, and he's got some pretty wild theories. Miss Jennifer?
If you need anything, please let me know.
And I think I told y'all this one. When you say that, you better darn well mean it. But when we say it, I think, don't beat me up, Miss Jennifer, but I think we don't mean it, okay? I just think we say it, and I've told you my conversion story when I was baptized.
I don't know if we don't mean it. I don't know if we don't expect it.
Okay.
We
Okay.
may mean it, but we're not expecting anybody
Okay.
to come back and ask for
Okay?
It's kind of like when I'll pray for you. Your plate gets full, and if they need something, you're heaped up.
I get it. I do. I completely understand.
I don't think either of those things are bad.
I don't either.
I just
Yeah.
think if there's no action behind it, it's less.
And I've told you my conversion story when I was baptized. Went home and told my parents. And I didn't expect my dad to go off like he did. I really didn't. This was junior year of high school, I think. Yeah, junior year. And when he said get out, I didn't have anywhere to turn except that little card that Sister Mel put in my hand. Because let me give you a full setting, and then we'll get into Eliphaz. When I was baptized in traditional churches of Christ that I've been associated with since I obeyed the gospel, 4 or 5 people, maybe 6 or 7, would hang around because they knew a baptism was going on. And so after the baptism, I would come out, or the person would come out, change their clothes, and then they'd dedicate a few scriptures, sing a couple of songs, and then just have a prayer. It wasn't very long. It was, maybe 5-6 minutes afterwards. Well, we made the circle. We huddled up, and then they sang the song. I never will forget one of the songs I heard again when I came to Texas, Tangina. It wasn't the first time I heard "We Love You with the Love of the Lord." They sang that when I was baptized in Georgia. So they sang that, and everybody, nice, welcome, gave me a hug and all of that. She came along and said, "Now, brother, the devil is not happy about what you just did. And if the devil sticks his head up and you need me at all, here's my phone number. You call me." Well, I took it, put it in my pocket. I had no clue that I would ever have to ring that phone. And that was it. That was my only connection to this newfound religion that I just obeyed. Now, I've thought about this over the years. Wonder what would have happened had I not had that phone number to make that call. Wonder if I would still be doing what I'm doing today, or would I've just dropped off the face of the earth and said, just forget it. See, that's my point. We need to mean it, and we need to be ready to serve should somebody call. We'll talk a little bit more when I give you these 10 commandment sheets. Look at Eliphaz. He acknowledged that Job has been the source of strength to other people. Chapter 4, verse 3 and 4. He's been an encouragement. But then he turns and he puts the blame for Job's suffering smack dab, well, it says squarely, but smack dab back on the fact that, Job, you must have messed up with God. What have you done that God is so upset with you? Your hard times are coming as a direct result of something that you have done. He reproves Job and says that God's judgments are for the wicked. Look at chapter 4 and verse 7. Let's do some reading. Look at chapter 4, verse 7. Actually, it's verse 7 and verse 8. Consider now, who being innocent has ever perished, where were the upright ever destroyed? As I have observed, those who plow evil and those who sow trouble reap it. I'm glad he said as he's observed, because that don't make it right. And I can hear my grandmother in this, Miss Jen. I can hear my who asked you? That's exactly the way she said it. Okay, Granny did not say ask. It was the chopping, the tool that you chop the wood. Who asked you? Okay? Well, I hear my grandmother here. Eliphaz, who asked you? Okay? And in his opinion, and people don't mean, I'm going to be very generous here. I'm of the opinion people don't mean, they have the best of intention. But you got to understand that person is hurting. That person is in pain. Our worst mistake on occasion by drawing the wrong views from an undeniable truth. Look at this picture. One person on one side of the picture says it's a 6. The other person on the other side of the picture says it's a 9. Who's right? I can't look at Miss Ginger because she knows exactly where I'm going. Who's right? They both are. But now they'll fuss and fight and argue.
I mean, move that 9.
Huh?
Put it in a different direction.
No, I think they did that deliberately for the point of the illustration.
I thought it was a G.
Huh? You thought it was a what? A D?
G.
A G. No. One side says 6, the other side says 9. Just because you're right doesn't mean I'm wrong. You just haven't seen life from my side. I love that. I do. I love that. Because it's a matter of perspective, isn't it? It's not so much, Jimmy, it's not so much I know how you feel. Because I don't. Unless I have walked in those exact same boots. Okay? And even then, I would argue it's still different. That's just, beat me up later. But this, I think this applies. Eliphaz is really kind of giving his 2 cents worth. And God love him, as we say in the South, bless his heart. God love him, but is that really going to help? And so when I give you this sheet in just a minute, these 10 commandments, I call them 10 commandments. They're just kind of 10 things that we just kind of need to be conscious of and aware of, especially when we approach people when it comes to pain. Eliphaz thought that Job, who was obviously not prospering, must have done something wrong. In other words, if you are innocent, why is God punishing you? Again, we read verse 7 through verse number 9. First of all, bad times are not indicative of a punishment from God. And God's really going to say this in just a second. The second thing he says, because he speaks 3 times in these chapters, and I'm just hitting the high spot. He says, now, Job, no harm intended, but you're really a fool if you think that you can call on God and he's going to respond to you and your current sinful state. I'm sorry, bless Eliphaz, bless his heart. Look at chapter 5, verse 1. I'm not there yet, but go ahead. Chapter 5, verse 1. Call if you will, but who will answer you? I'm sorry. This is funny to me. Call if you will, but who will answer you? To which of the holy ones will you turn? Resentment kills a fool, and envy slays the simple. I myself have seen a fool taking root, but suddenly his house was cursed. In other words, if you think you're going to call on God right now, and he going to answer you in your sinful stink state, you got another thing coming. Bless his heart. I do. I like it. I do. He's trying, but his theology, his whole theology, his way of looking at this is wrong. And then he says, the third problem, your third problem, Job, you really don't have any fear of God. You're not scared of God. Chapter 15, we'll be there in a minute. And verse number 1, if Job did fear God, Eliphaz reasons he would not be facing such suffering. Chapter 15, and this just kind of gives you a flavor for what's going on. And look at verse number 1. Eliphaz the Temanite replied, would a wise person answer with empty notions or fill their belly with the hot east wind? Would they argue with useless words, with speeches that they have no clue? But you even undermine pity and hinder devotion to God. Your sin prompts your mouth, and you adopt the tongue of the crafty. Your own mouth condemns you, not mine. Your own lips testify against you. Are you the first man who was ever born, who were brought forth before the hills? Do you listen in on God's counsel? In other words, you are in such bad shape with God. You need to repent, get right with God, quick, fast, in a hurry, or your suffering is not going to stop at all. Job responds, and I almost think this is really too funny. Job's had about a belly full of this. I mean, he's listened to Eliphaz, and Job says in 16:2, you are miserable comforters. And he tells all the friends, that, you ever had about enough of people when they come into you and they think they know, and they came to you for some comfort, but you aren't being comforted. You've been mad. You mad. Look at 16, Actually, it's 1 and 2. Then Job replied, I've heard many things like these. You are miserable comforters, all of you. Can you see struggling? And all of a sudden, y'all came to make me feel better. But guess what? I'm going to tell you something. You didn't do it. You didn't do it. You're miserable comforters, all of you. And we'll talk about this for next time, Bildad's message to Job, but God even comes in, and we'll see this next week. God even comes in and he says some things that really Eliphaz just missed the mark. And so I want to give you this 10 Commandments list. And these are just some things that I put around. Thank you, sir. These are things that I just kind of put some notes down. And they're just kind of some common sense things I want to spend. Yes, sir, Brother Harry?
You know, I wonder if maybe part of their thinking was because they're so close to the time when God actually condemned and punished people right then and there for disobedience and whatnot. You know, that they were close enough to the time when God destroyed nations and destroyed, priests and whatnot because they didn't do what they were supposed to do, didn't follow along like they were supposed to according to the commandments.
It's possible. That is very, very possible. I guess
that's where the history was.
That's where the history was. I guess I'm backing up a little bit more for our sake and saying let's talk about a few things that's in our time that if you were to go and to try to offer some comfort, I guess I look at these 10 things as an example of what not to do, because we've all been hurting. We've all experienced some pain, but more times than not, I think we've experienced a foot and mouth disease, with good intention trying to help. And I guess I want us to kind of look at the other side of the coin for just a second. Again, no one pain is any better or worse than any of the others, but a sensitivity, I guess is what I'm saying. Don't you think we need to have a certain sensitivity when we go to help people or to address this, that we don't make a bad situation worse? That's where I think but I hear you. And that may be a part of where they were coming from. Next week, and you might not be here, so I'll pick it up even with the third friend. If you thought this one was direct, his next friend, I'll give you a preview. His next friend says, Job, your problem is sin. And the longer you take to repent, the longer you're going to suffer. I'm like, what, really? And God actually comes back and says, no, you're wrong. Because none of you so far have even tried to point counsel towards me. You just laid it all on you. That's where I got the idea for this 10 Commandments. Other comments, questions real quick before we dive into this? And I just want to spend a few minutes every time just kind of talking through this. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I think, excuse me, a lot of times people think that, well, just like Eliphaz, God did this to you. But if you take here on earth, an even average, decent father is not going to cause harm or problem to his son like this. So why would God, as great as he is, cause problems for his son? I think that's where they missed the point.
They missed the boat. They did.
Like I said, you don't have to be a great dad to, take care of your kid.
Right. Right. Right.
So I think that's where they missed the boat.
They missed the boat. And part of it, I'm getting ahead, but it's okay. Part of it is, and God actually tells them this. We'll see it in the next section. You had nothing to do with pointing the person. You're supposed to be there to point Job back to me, and you're not doing it. You're laying all the blame and putting everything against me according to your own framework, and therein is the problem. When people are hurting, we need to point them towards God, not with our own platitudes and our own human thoughts and desires. Tangina, did I see your hand?
You actually commented on what I was getting ready to say. Sometimes when we're trying to help someone, we do more turning them away from God than pointing them to God in some of the things that we say.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we also need to remember people have different ears when they're in pain, but they may not hear what you're saying until much later, and that may not help them at all. That could further hurt them than help them. So let me give you 10 things, and we won't do all 10 of them today. I want y'all to kind of talk through the practicality of this. How do you see it? And maybe you have some practical examples that you want to share. And I just call these 10 commandments of reaching out to somebody and helping people when they're in pain. Doesn't matter the pain. Pain is pain, as pain is pain. Number one, you got to reach out. The first important step in supporting somebody is simply to reach out. Let them know that you are there for them, and don't be afraid of their pain. Just reach out. That's what I think as a good first step. And Job's friends, somebody said it, I think Jimmy said it, they didn't miss the mark on this. They heard he was hurting, and they reached out. They came, and as a matter of fact, they sat with him. Remember how long they sat with him? A week. I think it was 7 days. And they just kind of sat with him. Jimmy, the funny part is when they opened their mouth, things went down here. Okay, I'm sorry.
They should have just said
And they started opening, that's when things went south. So just be there. Just kind of show up. Number two, really actively listen to them. Approaching your conversation without any assumptions. What does that mean? What does that look like? What's that mean? Tangina, go ahead.
I was gonna say something totally.
Oh, go ahead.
Actively listening, a lot of times when someone is speaking, we're thinking through what we wanna say to them, and so we're not listening as carefully as we could. We need to actually turn our brain off as far as wanting a comment to come back and listen to the person. Sometimes they just need a listening ear, not a talking mouth.
How do we do that? I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you. How do we do that?
Practice.
Husbands, we get accused of all the time. The wife just wants us to listen, but we listen to determine whose legs we need to break or what we need to fix. And that's just. I'm sorry, Miss Ginger. That's how we wired. Okay. And my wife and I have an expression. She'll preface the conversation. Okay, brother, listen. I don't need anything fixed. I don't need you to break anybody's legs. I just need, because that's how I'm sorry. How do we do that? How do we, we got to sit on our hands and hold our mouth. How do we do that? We've got to, if we're going to actively really listen, and let me come at it another way. Can you tell when I'm not actively listening?
Sometimes.
Is that possible?
Sometimes.
You can tell? Sometimes you can't? Well, yeah, of course you
No,
yeah.
body language, facial expression, things like that. Can,
Okay.
Eyes can
Okay.
tell.
Okay. We got to actively listen. Be engaged in the moment. Let people know that you really, really care. Number three, and like I said, I won't go through all of these unless, y'all want me to. Don't offer solutions. Trying to fix the situation makes people feel misunderstood and not cared for, and can invalidate their emotions. Is that true? Is that true? Do you think that's true? We want to offer solutions. Like I told you, as men, yeah, we want to fix it, or whose legs need to be broke. No, sometimes we just, if I'm visiting somebody, don't offer solutions. Again, the one I've been telling you all morning. I can't tell you what to do. You know what I would do if I were you? Come on, don't do that. We've got to really don't offer solutions. Stay in the moment. Look at number 4. This one's tough. Don't make the situation about yourself. When my aunt had cancer, she tried this new treatment. No. No. Ooh, you sure look bad. my cousin looked bad like you and he died 2 months later. What? Really? No. No, just no. Make the situation about you. Pain is complex and can feel like a roller coaster. Focus on the other person's unique experience. After all, we are there, you are there, I'm there to provide support. Don't make the situation about yourself. I think that one ties in, to me, that one ties in to actively listening. Comments, questions, what do you think? Let's do one more. Number 5, don't assume or prognosticate. Tell the future. Hey, just suck it up. Tomorrow you'll feel better. Or all you need to do is get out and get you some fresh air. Their foot just got run over by a tractor. You tell them they got to get out and get some fresh. I mean, I'm just pulling an example. Hey, really? No, don't do that. We've got to be able to just sit and to be able to listen, to show up and to be there. What do you think? Are these helpful? You think these would be helpful when you're visiting somebody? See, because a lot of us think that we naturally have the gift of ministering to somebody, and we really don't. We think we do, but we really don't. And I told you this kind of funny story. I told my wife, I said, there's a couple of people, a couple of our acquaintances, our friends. If I'm on death's door, don't have them come see me. That little monitor thing that they have you hooked up for your heartbeat, boop, 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 they come in the door. Hi, Brother Family, boop, I'm gone, I'm out. I'm just, because they don't mean, their words mean more harm, come across more harm than good. What do you think?
Well, I know when we lost Chase, I bet we had 75 people the first day come to the house. I mean, that's not just, there were just people
That's a
constantly.
big number.
And
Yeah.
really, they'd come in and give you a hug and then just maybe stand there for a while and leave, or they'd just come in and sit. And, they would visit with each other, or we'd visit about just any and everything, and just, that was a comfort, just having people there. So just, Joe, in the first 7 days, he probably felt good having them there. But when their mouths started opening, then everything, like you said, went downhill.
It went south from there, And I want to make this clear. I don't think this was malicious. I don't think it was that they were trying to hurt Job's feelings. I think my intention for these, what I call 10 Commandments, is just to raise an awareness of sympathy, empathy, better word, and compassion. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just sit there. Hey, I don't know what to say. I don't have the words to say it, but I just want you to know I'm here and I care.
Yeah, I think they were good friends, but I think they had diarrhea of the mouth. Once it started, they didn't know where to stop.
Stop it.
That's
Go ahead, Mandy, and then Shayla.
And then they got angry because he wouldn't believe them. And so they took away any comfort by being angry with him for not listening to them.
And doing what they said. Yes. And then we're going to see that break out, especially at the end of the second one. God's going to intervene. God's going to come and say, listen, excuse me, time out. Y'all, your problem is you're supposed to be providing comfort and pointing back towards me. You two ain't done that yet. And so they were copping a little bit of an attitude. Go ahead, Shayla.
I think they're archetypes. I think that Satan was influencing their hearts, and that's what I don't think people do that today, like go and tell people you're sinning. But in front of them, I think they do it behind their back.
Ooh.
Or at home.
Ooh, I haven't thought about that.
Or in their mind.
Wow. Or what?
Yeah.
Or what?
Yeah, on
On social media.
I don't think people do that to people's face anymore, but I do
didn't think
they
of
might
that.
think that.
Right.
But I think it's archetypes to show that, and I think Satan had them in their grip.
I did not think of that. That
Because
does
I do
make
think they were
sense.
friends, and I think they loved him.
And like I said, when we started, Tangina, I'll be right there. Like I said, I don't think any of their comments or their, not advice, I don't think of anything of what they said was coming from a place of malice. I don't.
Yeah, it was
I
pretty
don't believe it
malicious.
at all. Well, it came across that way, but I don't think it was intended to be malicious. They were just saying what was on their mind, and it just happened to be wrong. It just happened to be wrong. Go ahead, Tangina.
I keep going back to the part that they were his friends. And isn't that what people do? If I'm really your friend, I'm allowed to tell you. People who say, this is my friend, and we're close, they feel like they can tell you the honest truth, their, perspective of the honest truth, because our friendship requires that.
So because I am your friend, does that give me license to just, Jimmy's expression, not mine, have diarrhea of the mouth?
And unfortunately, sometimes friends think that. Those who are acquaintances, sometimes
Right.
they think that they might put it on social media, they might, but if I'm gonna be your friend,
Right?
I don't want you to keep doing something that's going to be detrimental to you. So nobody else might not tell you the truth, but because I'm your friend, and I think a lot of times we think that I'm your friend, in quotes,
Mhm.
that I can tell you or say anything to you any kind of
That gives me
way.
license
That
to
gives
go
me
ahead?
license.
Wow. Mandy, go ahead.
Old saying, friends like that, who needs enemies?
Exactly.
I started to call, that's exactly what I started to call this section, but I didn't want to mess it up. But, with friends like these, ... That's what I started to put, but I didn't.
But a lot of times in reality, we'll say, we've been hanging buddies for a long time. We've been knowing each other for years, so I can be honest, and it's my interpretation of honest
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah.
And so, I hate this one. This might hurt your feelings, but I'm gonna be real.
Yeah.
If you think it's gonna hurt my feelings,
Then why say it? Especially during a time when I am most vulnerable and going through whatever pain that I'm going through. And again, this is just designed to just raise an awareness. Not that it's gospel truth. Just the next time we have to go and visit somebody, maybe this will jar something, and I'll be more sensitive and in what I say and trying to help. I'll tell you what it's done for me, and then Shayla, I'll give you a chance to wrap up. What this has all done for me is solidified one fact. When I go to see somebody, if I don't know what to say, I'm just going to say, I'm here and I'm praying for you, and I want you to know I care. And then I'm going to put some duct tape over my big old fat lips. I'm just kidding. Shayla, go ahead.
Okay. I'm trying to think. Okay, I'm a person that can be real with people, but I also am very careful about how I choose my words. And if they're my friend, I'm going to even be more careful about how I choose my words with them and how they're
As you should be. As you should be. But some people, I hear Tangina's point. Some people, because we are friends, that means that middle gate is down, and that gives me license. It's wrong, I think, but that gives me the license to say anything I want to say, however I need it. Doesn't matter. I'm not going to filter it because we're friends. And I think that's even more dangerous. We'll continue this next week. Thank you all very much.
Freddie, were there any slides on these?
Slides?
Yeah, did you have any slides on the?
Oh, I had that one. Yep,
Well, I was just wondering for online viewers.
I did. I had that one. I guess I should have probably been putting them in.
Oh, no, it's
Remind
fine.
me next time.
It's fine.
Remind me next time.